Visit us online, mattblattnissan.com.
South Jersey's home for the Sixers and Flyers.
Yeah! He scored! A two-hand jam!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Well, we are technically in the second half of the NBA season. We are getting ramped up for the NFL offseason. So we got a lot to cover here in the Power Hour. Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. Latest news on the Eagles coordinator search, plus we will get into the state of the Sixers coming out of the NBA All-Star break. We'll be joined coming up in less than 20 minutes from now with Rich Hoffman, covers the 76ers for The Athletic. As always, you can join the conversation at 609-403-0973 is the text board. You can also DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. Let's get to the Eagles stuff first, because I am very intrigued by this coordinator search. Listen, we all know that for all intents and purposes, unless something extraordinary happens, unless there is a moment in the Eagles offseason in the next week or two that deters them, Brian Johnson is going to be the offensive coordinator. So that's not the question for the Eagles. The question is who's going to be the defensive coordinator. And the names are starting to pile up. This week, we have had, for example, Vance Joseph's name. We've had Jim Leonard, the former Wisconsin defensive coordinator, former NFL player. Now, two more names have been added to the slate. Those names, according to Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network, include Rams DB's coach, pass game coordinator Chris Shula, and Michigan defense coordinator Jesse Minter. Now, I'm going to get to each one of these names of why they're relevant in just a moment, but I just wanted you to take this in for a second. You already have Denard Wilson on the staff, who has never called plays. You have now not one, but two coordinators who have never been play callers at the NFL level, Jim Leonard and Jesse Minter. And you have two other guys who have not been play callers either, in Shula and Wilson. The only guy with NFL coordinator experience is Vance Joseph. I don't know how I should feel about that, because when John Gannon was hired to be the defensive coordinator, it was not specifically a Nick Sirianni hire. That was a Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, hire. Don't forget, the Eagles did the same thing in 2016 that they did in 2021. When they hired Doug Peterson and then Nick Sirianni, they told both of them that you have to take this guy as your D coordinator. This is the guy that we want on your staff. Now, it worked out for both coaches as both of them got to the Super Bowl in their second year. But the huge difference is that Doug had Jim Schwartz for his entire tenure. Gannon's already out the door for another head coaching job. So, do the Eagles believe that it's less important about the guy's play calling background than it is about how he plans to call plays? Maybe that's part of the conversation. Maybe that's why there's so many guys at this point who have not called plays being interviewed. Look, I said to you guys last week, Vance Joseph and Lovie Smith were the first two names I'm calling. Well, the Eagles called one of two. Maybe Lovie is just so disenfranchised with the coaching profession entirely that he just wants out and wants no interest in doing anything. But here's the breakdown for all four of these D coordinator names. And you guys could chime in your thoughts as well as 609-403-0973 on the text board and your DMs in the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Vance Joseph is an interesting candidate because, one, all of his success has been under very specific circumstances. His best years as a coach was he had a couple years in Denver where the defenses played at a high level. So even though the offense didn't do much, the defense, when he was in Denver, was a top 10 defense in 2017. He also had Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. That helps. 2020, the Cardinals were 13th or better in numerous defensive categories. They had Hassan Reddick. The next year, Reddick leaves. The defense got statistically better, and the Cardinals went to the playoffs. Last year in Arizona and his last year in Denver, there were so many injuries. You really couldn't hold it against the guy for how the defense performed. So he has a record of success when it comes to when everyone is healthy on the field, he is successful. When guys are not healthy, he has had trouble getting his defenses to execute. Now, how much of that is personnel? If Vance Joseph never had a Howie Roseman in Denver or in Arizona. Arizona has been greatly heavily criticized for some of their free agent and draft decisions over the years. John Elway literally had to step away in Denver because he just wasn't getting the job done running football operations over there. So you could argue that maybe Vance Joseph had a better front office guy building out the roster. Maybe then he would have a better defense, but we may never know the true answer to that. The other names that are interesting, I told you guys I have zero interest in Denard Wilson only because I think it'd be good for this team to get a set of fresh eyes. If he is the D coordinator, then the Eagles are really leaning into this idea that it's less important for the guy to have coordinating experience and play calling experience, that the guy can just be anybody as long as he has the right philosophy. Jim Leonhard is fascinating because this is a guy who played in the NFL and had success at Wisconsin. And don't forget, a few of those years at Wisconsin, he was coaching TJ Edwards. So is this a opportunity to do to TJ Edwards what Brian Johnson is to Jalen Hurts, to find somebody from his past to entice him to not leave in free agency? Something to keep in mind. Also, Leonard's defense is in college. Again, it is college. So I'm not going to act like that. I'm not going to act like that this guy has exactly what it takes for the NFL. But Leonhard is an interesting character because when he was in college, Wisconsin did have some really good defenses. Look, last year, they were top 20 in points allowed per game. The year before, they were 4th in points allowed per game. The year before, they were 9th. That is a streak right there that is impressive. 2 years, they were down because of recruiting turnover. Remember, you don't have recruiting turnover in the NFL. You just go out for agency, boom, fix the problem. But when he had TJ Edwards, for example, they were 4th in college football in points per game allowed. So Jim Leonhard has a history of success at the college level with defense. How does that translate to the NFL? Not 100% sure, which gets me the Jesse Minter. Now, Minter is different than Leonhard because Minter actually used to work in the Ravens organization. So he has experience at the NFL level on an NFL coaching staff. And the part of the job, reason why he got the Michigan job was because John Harbaugh recommended to his brother, Jim Harbaugh, that Minter get the opportunity. And you could argue that Michigan's defense has benefited greatly from that, having one of the best defenses in all of college football last year. Then you get the guy in Chris Shula. Aside from the fact that he's the grandson of the Hall of Famer Don Shula, he is a guy that Nick Sirianni knows. They both worked on the Charger staff together previously. So he has a familiarity with Shula. He is aware of what Shula likes to do. And the interesting thing about Shula is, aside from his last name, which I know for a lot of people, may be the biggest thing that stands out about him. I think the thing that fascinates me about Chris Shula is the reality that this guy, for just take his name out of it, you look at the coaching staff that he's been a part of, he's been on the Rams since Sean McVay got there. So he is well aware of what is involved in getting to the Super Bowl not once but twice. He was the linebacker coach on the team that won the championship, assistant linebacker coach on the team that lost to the Patriots. Don't forget, that Patriots-Rams championship in the Super Bowl was one of the lowest scoring games of all time in a championship game. That was a defensive slugfest. So this guy now has been a part of not one but two championships that involve defense. So maybe there is something to that. Also, don't forget, he was under Wade Phillips and then Raheem Morris. So he's now been under two different defensive coordinators who have high-level experience at the highest level. So I think Shula, if he learns something from Wade Phillips and he learns something from Raheem Morris and he takes something from winning a championship, these are all things that can be positives. Now, again, Shula does not have play calling experience. And Shula is a guy who knows Sirianni. So it feels like each guy has a specific positive they bring to the table. Vance Joseph can basically be the head coach of the defense. Denard Wilson is an in-house graduate that knows exactly what Sirianni wants and what the organization expects of him. Chris Shula is a guy who has been on not one but two coaching staffs that went to the Super Bowl, and he's been around some great coaches, and he knows Nick Sirianni from the time with the Chargers. Jim Leonhard is a former NFL player who has been a successful college coordinator and had some of the best scoring defenses in all of college football during his time at Wisconsin. And then you have Jesse Minter, a guy who was in the Ravens coaching staff. John Harbaugh handed him off to his brother Jim, and they had one of the best defenses in all of college football recently, and he has shown the ability to call a high-level defense. But Minter, Shula, Wilson, Leonhard, none of them have NFL coordinator experience. Now, neither did John Gannon. So read into that what you will, and the Eagles still have a top-tier defense. So if you're the kind of person who believes that the personnel is more important than the coach and coordinator, then most of these guys should be able to work in Philadelphia. Speaking of working in Philadelphia, Josh Hennig hanging out with you, heading up to 7 o'clock here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers coming out of the NBA All-Star Game break. What can we expect from them heading down the stretch of the season? We'll talk with Rich Hoffman from The Athletic, covers the Sixers for them next here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle.
You haven't downloaded the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app? Well, go get it now to follow all the Philly sports teams at 97.3ESPN.com. Powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
It's a crime to pay more than a dime. One dime down at Springfield Mitsubishi of Atlantic City. Every vehicle, only one dime down. SpringfieldMitsubishiAC.com.
Dell Technologies President's Day business event starts now with deals to power America's doers and dreamers. Save on select performance business PCs powered by 12th Gen Intel Core processors. Don't forget special pricing on the latest monitors, docks, and accessories, plus free shipping and special financing with Dell Business Credit. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL for President's Day deals. That's 877-ASK-DELL.
Start the year off with a CD rate that, well, rates. For a limited time, Ocean First Bank is offering a 13-month term for 4.5% APY with as little as $10,000. Don't delay. Visit oceanfirst.com for complete details. Certain rules and restrictions apply. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Opportunity Lender.
You might get wireless data everywhere, but do you have to use it all the time? If that's not really you, there's TracFone. You can get the same nationwide 5G coverage as big carriers, but you pick a plan that you need for a lot less. Unlimited talk and text plans start at $15 a month, no contract. And now you can get the Samsung Galaxy A03s for just $49.99. TracFone. Now you're in control. While supplies last, 1 month equals 30 days. 5G capable device required. Actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary.
There's nothing better than the comforts of home, except maybe the comforts of a natural gas home. You'll love the reliable heat, plentiful hot water, and precise cooking temperatures that natural gas can offer. Not to mention the efficiency, reliability, and savings only natural gas can deliver. Make the switch to natural gas today and bring home even more comfort. Learn more at southjerseygas.com/lovemyhome or call us at 1-218-217-0864.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Haley, quote, Navage is the best thing I bought. I love it. My nose feels so clear now and I can breathe. I've been struggling with a stuffy nose for weeks. I bought Navage and it's amazing. Or this one. I use Navage every night, could not imagine life without it. I have 5 cats, and before I found Navage, I was a clogged mess. Now I breathe so much better, unquote. Those are 2 of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
The Riverview at Sweetwater Marina and River Deck is located on the historic Mullica River. With its versatile event space, all maintained by experienced, attentive staff, this venue presents an exceptional setting for a celebration to remember. Warm and intimate, Sweetwater specializes in weddings, sweet 16s, corporate events, bridal showers, and more. Sweetwater Marina and River Deck will be nothing short of amazing. Visit sweetwaterriverdeck.com for more information.
It's time to think about your tax refund. And Jackson Hewitt wants you to think biggest. As in, we guarantee you'll get your biggest refund or your money back plus $100. Who offers that? Come to think of it, nobody. It's one of the biggest guarantees out there and why you can't just file with anybody. For your guaranteed biggest refund, go to Jackson Hewitt today. Your wallet will thank you. When every dollar matters, it matters who does your taxes.
And now, a poem for all you lovebirds out there. Getting down on getting down. Some cars are red, others are blue. Trade in your old car and drive something new.
Fall in love with your new Nissan at Matt Blatt Nissan with 0% financing for 36 months, 0 payments for 45 days, and 0 money down.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
So bring any trade because AJ, the trade man, wants to buy your vehicle today, regardless of the make, miles, or condition. AJ pays cash. Then treat yourself to a brand new Nissan Altima, Pathfinder, or Rogue, all with 0 down, 0 payments, 0 interest. And only Matt Blatt Nissan has a 4-day love it or leave it return policy. MattBlattNissan.com. Rate qualifications exist with approved credit $27.78 per thousand. Finance like in-stock 2023 Rogues. Pathfinder Altima. Not all will qualify. Go to MattBlattNissan.com for complete details or call 844-917-4758. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer, except for licensing, registration, and taxes. VIN PC 739900. Rogue S. MSRP 31,180. Block 589. Sell price 31,774. Expires 3/3/23. It's on. Nissan.
You're listening on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
GameNight being brought to you by my friends over at Jenkins & Sons. One call does it all. Just call 609-641-6262. Renovate your kitchen? Call Jenkins. For new heating and air installation, call Jenkins. Service and maintenance, ductless air conditioning systems, water heaters, boilers, oil service, plumbing and drain cleaning services. One call does it all. 609-641-6262 or visit them online at jenkinsandsons.com. Now the NBA All-Star break is over, our full focus goes to the second half of the Sixers. It really isn't a half, more like the final quarter of the season, more so when it comes to the games. But as Rich Hoffman writes about over at The Athletic, this team has a difficult road ahead of them before they even get to the playoffs. And he joins us right now here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Rich, welcome in. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So what is the real big picture on the Sixers coming out of the All-Star break? Because I think a lot of people, they're looking, now is the time to get back into basketball, right? They had the Phillies, their World Series run, the Eagles, their Super Bowl run. Now the Sixers are like the team left of relevance in the city. So what do fans who maybe weren't hyper-focused on the team to expect moving forward?
Well, I think you said it. I think there's a really hard schedule coming up with a lot of high-profile games. I would say, they have a homestand this week with two huge nationally televised games against Memphis and Boston, and then Miami afterwards, which is like as hard of a 3-game homestand as it gets. And then they go on the road for 12 of 15. I think it's a good time to jump back in. And I do agree with you that they have flown under the radar this year. I mean, they are 38-19. They're basically the best team of the Joel Embiid era, I would say. The only competition in the regular season is the team 2 years ago. And I think with James Harden over Ben Simmons, they certainly feel a little more balanced and more of a playoff ready team. But yeah, they've flown under the radar. The team, people have not been paying attention to this team as much for obvious reasons because of the Phillies and the Eagles making these long runs. And I think that has benefited the Sixers. So I guess we're going to figure out a little bit about this team over the next couple months. And the 82 game NBA season can be a slog, but you don't have to really watch as much now. You have a sprint and then you have the playoffs.
If I could just address what you just said, you mentioned this might be the best team that Embiid's ever had around him. I think a lot of Sixer fans would say, well, hold on, Rich. We love that Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, Embiid, Simmons team. I mean, they didn't love Simmons, but they love Jimmy Butler, and that kind of overarches. So for you, what is the big difference between the Jimmy Butler Embiid tandem and the Embiid Harden tandem now?
Yeah, and to be clear, I was just mentioning the record during the regular season is a little bit better than that team. I don't know if this team is better than the Jimmy Butler team, although I do think that we sometimes don't remember kind of how topsy-turvy that season was. Yes, they were extremely talented. Yes, Jimmy Butler was, a killer like he always is in the playoffs. And I think there's an argument that team, which was a bounce away from playing the future NBA champions in overtime in Game 7, was the best team of the Joel Embiid era. That said, like this year's team, I think has more continuity than that group. Like that team's bench was not very good. The minutes when Joel Embiid was on the bench were a disaster, and that was partially because their bench was very thin outside of those first 5 players. And I would also say, like during the regular season that year, Jimmy Butler was not as good as he was in the playoffs. He wasn't shooting 3-pointers. Joel Embiid is a much better player now than he was back then. He was, maybe the 12th, 13th best player in the league. He's borderline MVP candidate. I think you can argue him and Nikola Jokic and Giannis any which way you want, but he's one of the best 3 or 4 players in the league, I would say. So there's just more continuity this time around. There's no guessing what James Harden is going to do. Him and Joel Embiid are the best pick and roll duo in the league. So I think there is an argument that 2019 team might have been better. There is no Jimmy Butler on this team, but I think this team's pretty close. I think this team is well-rounded on both ends of the court. So, you can have it any way. And, that team was a legitimate title contender. And I think this team, under the radar, I would not pick them in a series against Boston and Milwaukee, but they have a chance. This is one of their better teams.
A lot of Sixer fans that I talked to, Rich, whether it was listening to the show on our text board or meeting people out and about, they all were underwhelmed with the trade deadline. They felt like, the whole league was wheeling and dealing, and all the Sixers did was trade away Matisse Thybulle. So is there a legitimate guy in this buyout market that you could see them grabbing onto? Or do you think that the roster as is what this team is going to run with moving forward?
I think the roster is mostly what it's going to be. And the deal with the trade deadline was that they didn't have a lot that they could do. They signed PJ Tucker and Daniel House to the type of contracts that hard capped them in the offseason. So they really couldn't go much higher than that. They are pretty much out of second round picks, in part because they got docked for tampering. So I don't want to say that they aren't completely blameless there. But there really wasn't a lot for them to trade. And, you looked at it, Matisse Thybulle and the second round pick that they used in that trade to get Jalen McDaniels, those were their best assets. That was kind of the best that they thought they could have done with what they had. And then when it comes to the buyout market, I think Sixers fans sometimes think back to the 2018 season when they got Ersan Ilyasova and Marco Bellinelli on the buyout market. That historically is one of the most successful buyout markets a team has ever had. And when we look at it, those guys were good players. They certainly helped that Sixers team reach the second round of the playoffs, but they weren't game changers. And I would say more often than not, when you look at somebody like Kevin Love, who just signed with Miami, some other players, that sometimes somebody breaks through, but especially when a team is basically buying out a player, and especially a team that is contending like Cleveland and some of these other teams, I would not have my hopes up too high that those guys are going to swing, a title or anything like that.
Talk with Rich Hoffman from The Athletic here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Rich_Hoffman. Check out his latest on what we expect from the Sixers after the NBA All-Star break. Rich, you mentioned Doc Rivers. When Doc first got here, that first interview with him and Daryl Morey in the really creepy, empty gymnasium media setup because of the Zoom calls and everything, Doc mentioned that he wanted to have a number one defense. He wanted these guys to play defense. Well, I got to at least say from my eyeballs, Rich, hasn't been great defense times. In fact, I'm sensing a lack of effort at times. So how much of the defense this year has been the byproduct of a long NBA season, and how much of it is they just don't have the personnel to run the kind of defense that Doc wants?
That was a great memory of the pandemic day press conference. Yeah, it was. That was certainly a weird situation. Look, I think this is it's a well-rounded team. They actually are top 10 in both offense and defense. But if you made me think with watching like you said, the eyeball test and just watching this team recently when they've had their full complement of players available, the defense is a much bigger concern. It's been pretty average league-wide since James Harden and Tyrese Maxey have gotten back. Those two players are below average defenders, both of them, and they are, your second and third best players. So that presents some issues, which, by the way, that's part of the reason they moved Tyrese Maxey to the bench. And I'm not saying that was necessarily the correct move, but it is some of the limitations that this group is going to have to work around. And yeah, look, I think this team is deeper than most of the Sixers teams. I think it is a better offensive team than the Sixers have ever had. That Embiid is as good as he's ever been offensively. And he also has a partner in James Harden who is it's just a deadly pick and roll combo. But if I were to pick one weakness that this team has and that could hold them back in the playoffs, it's perimeter defense. And that affects everything. That affects their rebounding because Embiid has to help and try and block shots. And then that opens up offensive rebounds for other teams. That opens up 3-pointers. It's an issue. And I agree with you. There has been lackadaisical effort at times throughout the year, which is kind of amazing that they're the 7th ranked defense in the league. And I think the hope is just in the playoffs, this is a veteran win now team that they're able to turn it on. And I've seen teams do that. I saw that 2019 team do that too, to the point where, they flip the switch in the playoffs and it's a different thing. But yeah, I'm certainly a little bit concerned about this team's perimeter defense.
You literally set the foundation for my next thing I wanted to touch on base with you, Rich, which is you mentioned hitting that switch. We know that when Harden wants to, he can give you legitimate defensive effort. And we've been told this is the best shape that Harden's been in years. He's got his friend working out with him every day at his house. That Harden is in the best place he's ever been in years and all this stuff. So do you think James Harden is going to hit that switch when the postseason comes around in terms of, because we know he does offensively, but we have seen him at times defensively really put out a really good effort?
Yeah, he's had some decent moments, and this has always been the thing with Harden. He played in a very switch-heavy scheme in Houston, which was kind of catered to his needs. Where that's not what he's not good at is kind of chasing around screens and moving, for lack of a better term, laterally. But he has good hands. He's strong. He's got decent defensive instincts. But yeah, there are times when his effort is just not there. I think for him, the bigger key is going to be offense, though, and it's like, can he score against the elite defenses that are going to switch against him, force him to be 2017 James Harden and beat them one-on-one. There was actually a couple really good moments in that game against the Cavs, last game before the All-Star break, where he took Evan Mobley, who's one of the league's best, switchiest young defenders, and he went right by him like 3 or 4 times. And it was, a good sign for a team that doesn't always see that level of burst with James Harden. I think on the defensive end, even if he ramps it up, you're only going to get to maybe slightly below average. But to me, the big key for him is the offensive end. Can he be not the 2017, 2018 MVP level Harden, but can he show it in flashes? Because that's what they need. They already have an MVP level player in Joel Embiid, but they're going to need him to have his moments in the playoffs.
Rich, another thing Sixer fans are asking about is Harden's partner, that being Joel Embiid, because Embiid made those comments to you guys in the media before the break about he's sore. The doctor said he should have taken a couple of weeks off. Then he goes and plays in the All-Star game, and people are like, hey, Giannis sat out almost the whole game with his wrist. Why didn't Embiid take more of a resting approach? So what is your perspective on Embiid coming out of the All-Star break down the stretch here?
Yeah, how they handle him is going to be really interesting because, I don't, sometimes he can be a little bit dramatic with his injuries, but I don't think this is necessarily the case. Like I've seen him, a couple times this year. He falls down a lot, obviously, and I'm used to it, and I'm used to not really thinking a lot of it. There have been a couple times this season where he's really tweaked that left foot. And, the proof is in the pudding. He's missed a week a couple of times because of that left foot. Now, I think credit is due for him where he's played in 17 of the Sixers' last 18 games. And, that obviously includes some MVP level basketball. That includes him really taking it to Nikola Jokic on that big stage. But they play 17 of 31 days in March. And I think there are a couple times where I would imagine he just gets the day off because that's just way too many games. But for a guy who's already nursing a foot injury and says, hey, the doctor told me the best thing for this is to get a couple of weeks of rest. I will be very curious how he and the Sixers handle it. It certainly hasn't hurt his play. He's still playing at an MVP level. But I'm very curious, how the Sixers handle this because the playoffs ultimately are what matters. I'm not sure he's ever going to win an MVP award with Nikola Jokic and just how many games he plays and, the national media. It seems like they have their mind set up on Jokic. The way he can really add to his legacy, the way he can really change minds is to have a great playoff run, is to win a title. And, this month of March is going to be tricky for him for sure in terms of how to balance getting the Sixers to the playoffs, his regular season interests, and what ultimately matters the most.
Yeah, that word load management is kind of one of the more controversial words right now. And I remember, JJ Redick was saying this morning on ESPN that, for a guy like him who did everything he could to take care of his body and be in the best shape that he could, that even he, could only hope to play 75 to 78 games a year. So like you said, Embiid, Harden, maybe some of the other guys, you just have to wonder how many of these games down the stretch do they actually play? Because, Rich, you know how Sixer fans are. They want the Sixers to be the number 1 seed or else. And it's like, well, they might not get there because Boston is a pretty good team.
Yeah, and Milwaukee is, I don't know what the exact number is now. I think it's 12 in a row that they've run off there.
12 in a row, yep.
Also an awesome team. And yeah, it's kind of this tough situation where I think in most years, if the Sixers had this record, they would be in line to get that number 1 seed. Unfortunately, the 2 best teams reside in their conference and are their rivals, and they have to play them a combined 4 times down the stretch here. And yeah, he brought it up. Like PJ Tucker and James Harden are both players that the Sixers targeted earlier in the year for their age. You know, James Harden, 33 years old, but also your second most important player. PJ Tucker, also a very important player, 37 years old. They targeted them as potential, like, you know, we don't want to wear these guys out too much in the regular season. And I just wonder, you know, looking at the schedule, I would be surprised if there aren't some games that the Sixers just punt, because it is such a brutal, it's such a brutal schedule. And, you know, to this point, I don't think they have been on like the heavy side of load management. You know, they've taken a couple games off here and there. There was that game in Sacramento where they punted it, but Shake Milton and Tyrese Maxey basically won it for them. That was one of their best wins of the season, but there hasn't been a ton of that so far this year. And, you know, it'll be interesting how much they care. Like, even if they can't get the 1 or the 2 seed, can they hang on to 3 here? Cleveland is right on their heels, and they have a pretty easy schedule down the stretch. So definitely, like, I guess to bring it full circle to your initial question, like the Sixers have a decent amount to play for in the last month here. Like, it's, even though they are playing well, the East is really challenging, and they have a bunch of different factors that they have to weigh, and, you know, health and competitiveness and all of those things. So it's going to be fun over the next couple of weeks.
Looking ahead, they are the 3 seed for now, heading into the final stretch of the season. Is it their best interest to stay in the 3 spot to potentially avoid Boston in the second round?
I don't really look at it that way. I would say Boston and Milwaukee are both very good teams. I do understand your question, though. If you made me pick which team the Sixers match up better than, I do think it would be Milwaukee. But I think the Sixers have to look at it as, if they are not the 1 seed, they're going to have to go through 2 of them to make the finals. So, you know, does it exactly matter the order? I'm not sure it does. You know, maybe Cleveland could knock off Boston in the second round. I would not really bet on that. So, you know, if they get the 3 seed, I don't really see like an obvious path. Like a couple years ago when they messed it up and when Ben Simmons really struggled in that Hawks series, they had a path where getting the 1 seed gave them the nice route to the conference finals and maybe the finals. Ultimately, they didn't take it in the playoffs, one of their most disappointing runs. I don't really see that with where they stand in the Eastern Conference standings right now. They're going to play probably Brooklyn or New York, maybe Miami in the first round, and then they'll get Milwaukee or Boston for the next 2. And I think looking at that, you know, that run, I'm not sure there's a ton they can do, barring them getting the 1 seed, which would, you know, I'm not saying it's impossible, but that would require them to play really, really, really good basketball down the stretch here. And I think they could still do that and not get the 1 seed. So I wouldn't be too concerned about seeding if I were them.
Rich, before I let you go, can Sixer fans expect to see Mac McClung get run these final 25 games?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Obviously, he's a 2-way player, so now he is eligible to play. And, you know, as we've kind of been talking about over these last few minutes, there might be games where Joel Embiid and James Harden are sitting and they have to reach deeper into the bench. So potentially there is a chance. I mean, he's still with the Blue Coats for now. You know, they are a deep roster. They have guys like Daniel House and Furkan Korkmaz who are ahead of McClung in the rotation. And, you know, on those nights off, those guys will get some minutes. I wouldn't be stunned to see Mac, especially in some late season games, if, you know, the Sixers are comfortable with their seed and they're just trying to rest. But, you know, he still is pretty low on the totem pole, I would say. Obviously, great story. I wrote a story about him last week, and then he blows up in the dunk contest. Super humble kid who's really grinded in the G League. Awesome story. But, yeah, he is still pretty far down on the totem pole for the Sixers. He's probably at the very bottom in terms of players. But, look, you know, the regular season, at the end of it, sometimes teams rest their guys. So I wouldn't completely rule it out.
He's Rich Hoffman, writes about the Sixers for The Athletic. Give him a follow on Twitter at Rich_Hoffman. Also, don't forget, check out the Sixers Beat podcast. Like, subscribe, download, give it the 5-star review. And, of course, if you're not a subscriber to The Athletic, well, what are you waiting for? Go get that subscription and go read all of Rich's articles covering the 76ers, as 25 games are left in the regular season. Down the stretch, they come. Rich, great stuff today. I appreciate you jumping on.
Okay, Josh. Thank you.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle. Coming up next, we'll check in on the text board. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Dan and EHT, I see your message. Get to you and more coming up next here with me, Josh Hennig, on 97.3 ESPN.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey tonight on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action.
Scores! Morgan Cross buries it.
It's Flyers Oilers tonight. Coverage begins at 9 p.m. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN and listen live on the free mobile app.
Mega Millions and Powerball are both over $100 million. Could you be Jersey's next huge jackpot winner? Take a chance and get your tickets today. After all, anything can happen in Jersey.
Dell Technologies President's Day event is here with deals to power all your passions. The savings start now on select sleek XPS laptops and more, powered by 12th Gen Intel Core processors. Don't forget, special pricing on the latest monitors, docks, and accessories, plus free shipping on everything and monthly payment options with Dell Preferred Account. Just call 877-ASK-DELL for these limited time President's Day deals. That's 877-ASK-DELL.
Hey, big guy. Simple credibility approval.
Listen, big guy, try this. Give them more cash for their clunker. That was my idea.
Why pay more when you can pay 0% with 0 down? So bring any trade to Matt Blatt Kia and drive home in a brand new Kia. Because if you have a job clearing $350 per week, Matt Blatt Kia wants to approve you. Even with 0 down and 0% APR financing for 36 months. Don't see your new Kia on the lot today? That doesn't mean you can't drive it home tomorrow with peace of mind. Matt Blatt Kia's exclusive 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Rate qualifications exist with approved credit. $27.78 per thousand financed on in-stock 2023 Sorrento Hybrid. Not all will qualify. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details or 888-505-6670. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer, except for licensing, registration, and taxes. Expires 3/3/23. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. And now on Route 37 and Tom's River.
Did you know that over 90% of male enhancement pills are virtually the same thing that's repackaged, redone over and over again? Why settle for the same old product when you can get something completely different? Something that takes male enhancement into the 21st century. Something that really works. Men, you need to try Noxitril, the explosive, all-natural male enhancement formula that will unlock your performance in the bedroom to a level you could only dream of. Try to imagine Viagra on steroids. Noxitril is so powerful, that's why it took years for it to finally become available to the public without a prescription. So call now and take advantage of our special Noxitril free bottle offer today. Oh yeah, we recommend that you use the Noxitril dose as directed. Think of your partner. We certainly don't want you to overperform in the bedroom.
Call now and find out how to get a free bottle of Noxitril while supplies last. Call 800-993-2150, 800-993-2150. Free bottles for a limited time. So call now, 800-993-2150, 800-993-2150.
It's tax season, and my guest today is Mark Stieber, the Senior VP and Chief Tax Information Officer with Jackson Hewitt. Do taxpayers have to pay taxes on stocks and cryptocurrencies, as this issue has brought on a whole nother set of challenges?
Yeah, the capital gain rules with regard to selling any asset, whether it's a stock or a bond or even some other investment, gold coins or collectibles, for example. Those rules are also very complicated, but also very favorable if you know what the rules are and how they work. So I'll simply say, if you've got capital transactions, small or large, and a lot of people do today, and whether it's stocks or bonds or virtual, you really do need to pay attention, and you really do need to find someone who's both trained and experienced in that area, because you can put too much on your tax return. If you leave it off, they may come around and ask, why did not you include this? And then you've got another whole set of problems.
When every dollar matters, it matters who does your taxes. Go to Jackson Hewitt to get your biggest refund guaranteed. Visit jacksonhewitt.com for details.
Hi, honey. Happy first day back at work. Can't wait to see you tonight. We are so proud of you.
Dad, we love you.
There are many reasons to start recovery. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, we are here to help.
Call us. Our trained counselors are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to help. Your recovery is within reach. Call 844-REACH-NJ to learn about medication that can support your recovery. A message from the New Jersey Department of Human Services.
Using your phone should never have to be a luxury. Walmart Family Mobile now offers free or discounted plans through the Affordable Connectivity Program. ACP is a government program that helps eligible Americans have access to wireless service. You could get unlimited talk, text, and 8 gigabytes of high-speed data for free when you qualify. Apply now at myfamilymobile.com/ACP. Walmart Family Mobile is supported by the Affordable Connectivity Program and Lifeline government assistance programs. Please visit myfamilymobile.com/ACP for more information.
For exceptional savings on your next BMW, visit BMW of Atlantic City. Lease a new 2023 BMW X1X Drive 28i for $559 a month for 36 months. Or lease a new 2023 BMW X3X Drive 30i for $599 a month for 36 months. Plus, we'll pay top dollar for your current vehicle. Visit BMW of Atlantic City, closer than you think. Located in Egg Harbor Township and online at bmwatlanticcity.com. For more details, call us toll.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Time of the show where we get to what you guys have to say. Of course, the text board is open as always, 609-403-0973. And your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of PIL. Let's first get to here on the DM. James trying to say, hey Josh, what do you think about Jim Leonard as Eagles defensive coordinator candidate? And I think what he's trying to say is why not give Bernard Wilson a shot? Let's hit on Leonard first. Leonard is intriguing. As I said earlier in the show, I think Leonard is a candidate in part because of TJ Edwards. I think there's a perception that if they do the D coordinator route, why don't you get somebody who is familiar with TJ Edwards? TJ Edwards is familiar with him. I know that Leonard's a bit of a weird situation. Those who know the full story. He was the presumptive coaching waiting at Wisconsin. And they made him the interim coach. The assumption by a lot of people was that he was going to be the next full-time head coach for the Badgers. And then Luke Fickell got the job. And then Leonard was on the outside looking in when Fickell wanted to bring a lot of the people from his staff to Cincinnati over to Wisconsin. So Leonard is kind of in this purgatory right now, coaching-wise, because he was supposed to be this rising star in college football as a coach, and now he has no job at all. Third, with the circumstance, I know for Leonard, there's probably a part of him that says, look, if I can get an NFL job, be a D coordinator in the NFL for a couple of years, and maybe go back to college and be a head coach somewhere, I think that would probably be his personal best-case scenario. You know, college jobs open up all the time. So Leonard is a little like Dan in the fact that his long-term goal is not being a D coordinator, it's to be a head coach. So if you bring in Leonard, you may only have him for 2, 3, 4 years maximum. But if he's good enough to do the job and he fits the criteria Nick Sirianni wants, I think he could still be a very productive coordinator. I don't know exactly how his defense fits in the NFL, because remember, one of the keys to his defense in college was the idea of, he never had the best passing defense. He would typically get beat over the top for a couple of years. We had bad defense, physically, not so good defense. As I said earlier, how much of that was Leonard? How much of that was the fact that college football, you're constantly having guys graduate and have to bring in new guys into the system? I think it'd be interesting to see what Leonard does as a former NFL player, as a coordinator in the NFL. Why don't I want to give Denard Wilson a shot? I just think that the Eagles need they need somebody to come in here. This is the way the NFL works now. The NFL works where the guy who runs the opposite side of the ball of the head coach. So if the head coach is an offensive-minded coach like Sirianni, the defensive guy is like the head coach of the defense. You go to an organization like the Rams, that's what they did. They won a Super Bowl. That's what the Chiefs have done. They have now won 2 Super Bowls under that philosophy. The Patriots did that for years with Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniel. Belichick on the defense, McDaniel on the offense. They won Super Bowls, right? To me, there's a pattern here. Bruce Arians ran the offense at Tampa. Todd Bowles ran the defense. They won a Super Bowl. The majority of teams that are successful in the NFL have this setup where you have the one guy who has the offensive background, but he hires a defensive guy to basically be the man in charge of the defense. I think Leonard and Todd Bowles fits that mold. Denard Wilson doesn't. I don't think Wilson has the cachet, the pedigree in the league to be viewed that way. Now, maybe I don't view him that way because I'm not in the NovaCare Center. I'm not aware of how the players look at him. So maybe part of the reason why he is a candidate is because that's how the players and the organization views him. Dan and EHT chimes in 609-403-0973. Dan says, Vance Joseph is our man, only because Eagles fans want the blitz. I personally am not sure. What do you think? I don't know if Vance Joseph is the man because I think that you wouldn't spread yourself into the college ranks if Vance Joseph was the clear guy to get the job. And I don't think Vance Joseph is this crazy blitzer. People have this idea that in order to be successful in football, you got to run a Jim Johnson style defense. Well, guess what? Steve Spagnuolo is a Jim Johnson disciple. Ron Rivera was under Jim Johnson at one point before he went to the Chargers organization, right? There are a lot of guys coaching in this league who were under Jim Johnson. They don't run the Jim Johnson defense because that defense leaves you exposed on the back end. I don't think Vance Joseph is silly enough to be going out to be like, I'm going to send 6-7 guys every time, and I'm going to leave my secondary completely vulnerable. I think Joseph is a little smarter than that. I think Joseph actually came off very well. If you watch the in-season Hard Knocks for the Cardinals, he came across as the level-headed coach, and Cliff Kingsbury came off as a celebrity coach. So I don't know if he is the automatic guy for the Eagles because I think the organization is looking at guys like Jim Leonard and Jesse Minter because they look at those defenses in the Big Ten and they say, well, how did that defense do against their conference competition and why were they exposed in bowl games, for example? I think that'll probably answer the question for them. And of course, like I said, Chris Shula is here because he's got a relationship previously with Sirianni and because of the fact that he was on a Super Bowl staff. He's been a loser. He's been a winner in the biggest game of the year. Sirianni just lost. Maybe there's something that Shula can bring to the staff in terms of experience being around people like Wade Phillips, Raheem Morris, and Sean McVay that Sirianni would like to have. Also, text says, Sixers' issue in the past playoffs has been Embiid's injuries and Tobias Harris underachieving this year. They are not expecting much out of Harris. Notably, Joe can be healthy. Championship series is very possible. Conference championship series, sure. I don't think that is completely out of the question. I think Rich Hoffman put it very well. There is a chance that a team like the Cavs could beat the Celtics in the second round of a playoff series. The question is that your key to make the run? The people have this idea the Bucks are some easy matchup for Philadelphia. I don't see that at all. I feel like when Milwaukee is healthy, they are just as good as Boston is because, Giannis and Middleton and Holiday are as much of a big three as anybody in the NBA. And I don't know if Boston has all the answers for that big three at all. I think Boston has a great regular season. I think they're a very talented team. I think they're a deeper team, arguably, than they were last year, but I don't know if they are guaranteed. So, look, Embiid's injuries in the past have been an issue. You heard Rich Hoffman bring it up. That playoff series against the Raptors, he was not healthy most of that postseason. No Ben Simmons anymore. You don't have to worry about him. I don't think Harris has been that underachieving. I think Harris at times has been asked to do things that are not his expertise, and I think that has been a huge part of his struggles with the 76ers. When you're asking a guy to play out of his role, look, Hassan Reddick was used as an inside linebacker. Was supposed to be a draft bust. Move him to an outside pass rusher, he becomes a perennial Pro Bowler and one of the pass rushers in the NFL. sometimes knowing a guy's role and putting him in the right role to be successful is a big key to this. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night, everybody.
Mega Millions and Powerball are both over $100 million. Could you be Jersey's next huge jackpot winner? Take a chance and get your tickets today. After all, anything can happen in Jersey.